I'm doing good. Can't wait to get into it. So last night, the Wildcats bounced back with a win after two previous losses. One over Utah seemed like a blowout loss by 15 points, but in last night's game they bounced back. They won by 9 points over the Oregon State Beavers. Patrick, give me your take on the game and how do you think they played?
This was probably the defensive performance that Sean Miller's been looking for this whole season, don't you think? I mean, he made a starting lineup change, putting Creasa in for Terrell Brown Jr., and he talked about it after the game and said the reason for that change was he kind of wanted a defensive identity change. And Creasa coming in, he's being a much better defender than I ever expected him to be this early. You know, he slides his feet super well, and he can be that pest of a guard that can play you 94 feet. And most teams don't have a luxury to put a guard that can stick with you for 94 feet, or also want to wear their ball handle out with facing full court pressure the whole time. So that's an added bonus to I think increase his potential. But as a team, they've played really good defense. Matherin, I thought, was the best player on the court. He's showing time and time again that he should be a late first round pick at worst, probably is what I'm thinking right now. So hopefully gets national attention soon. But this was a pretty good overall win. It's not the dominant 40-point one they had against the Beavers last time, but I think finding some defensive identity and some physicalness this time around was very important.
Yeah, I agree with those points. Matherin is the standout player on this team since probably the second to third week of the season. Game in and game out, he just produces. And he's gotten better as a shooter every game. I mean, he's very reliable from deep in the last few games. And the two guys that stuck out to me last night were Kerr Kriisa and Christian Koloko. I'll get into Koloko a little bit later, but with Kriisa last night, as you said, he's a very active defender and wants to play hard defense. He was only 2 for 7, and his stats, he had 8 points, 2 threes. They might not look that great, but I just saw a very good passer, ball handler, and his shooting looks to get better and he looks more confident every game. I mean, this was only his third game playing college basketball in the United States. I mean, after playing overseas last year. So it's a big adjustment. But something I'm going to bring up to you that we've discussed in the past is I think Sean Miller is playing Kerr Kriisa and James Akinjo in the wrong positions. I think that Kerr Kriisa should be playing point guard because he's just flat out a better ball handler and does a better job of getting his team involved than James Akinjo does. When Akinjo is handling the ball, it just seems like the ball stops. There's not a lot of movement in the offense, and that he's not a ball hog. I mean, but he's the closest thing to a ball hog on this team. So what do you think about that? Do you think that maybe Akinjo should try being the shooting guard on this team?
I 100% agree with you. It's something we brought up on our podcast last week, earlier this week, is I think Kriisa is a really good ball handler in general, and I think he's an even better playmaker. And this whole season, I get it. Akinjo can shoot, he can score, but man, I hate watching offense when the point guard is a ball stopper. And I like to see the ball pinging around. It's beautiful basketball. It's more fun basketball to watch. And there's reports coming out before this season that said one of the reasons why Akinjo transferred from Georgetown, why it didn't work out there, is because his teammates and his coaches didn't really love how many shots he takes, how less often he passes the ball. And he's shooting only about 38% from the field, I think. And that's pretty unacceptable. Houston in the past brought up said, they're not going to win when they've got a ball hog at point guard, talking about Akinjo like that. And so, he gets 6 assists a game, but they look like Russell Westbrook assists to me, where it's not really passing the ball out, where it's driving down the lane. And if my shot's not there, I'm going to drop this guy and see if he can make it. So he's not necessarily a bad passer. He just doesn't seem like a wanting passer. And I think Kriisa, I wrote an article on him scouting out like his strengths coming into his offensive strengths, and his passing and his game recognition is really high level already for a 19-year-old, and playing professionally in Europe and Lithuania. I think the game is really slow for him right now, which is important for this young Arizona team. So I think it'd be good to get a floor general that the rest of the guys can trust and know that Kriisa is going to find them if they're open. And if they know that, they'll feel more confident. Now it just seems like they're begging Akinjo to pass him the ball, where Kriisa wants that ball moving, and he knows he'll get his shots if he needs to. But the game just seems smooth for him. And just from the eye test, the team looks better when he's out on the court offensively, I think. So that's something Sean Miller's got to think about with these final 5 remaining games, or probably even next year with Akinjo and Kriisa probably coming back.
Yeah, he's been very good so far, and I like his improvement game in and game out. But another guy I want to touch on real quick is Jules Tabelis. I mean, last night and even the last few games, he hasn't been that same offensive force as he was the following few weeks, months in the season. I mean, last night 6 points on 3 for 7 shooting from the field, and he did have 10 rebounds, which is very good. So he still impacted the game at a very high level. Don't get me wrong, but he just flat out needs to get more involved in the offense. And Sean Miller said after the game that they need to do that, and they're going to really try to get him involved. I mean, like we've seen in the past few games, when he's involved, this offense is different, and they just score more. And I mean, last night was 70-61. It was a kind of high-scoring game at the end, you could say, but the whole first half and a little bit of the second was basically a low-scoring game, and the Wildcats pulled through. But I mean, no one really stepped up, I would say, last night on the offensive end and really wanted it that much. But yeah, they really need to get him involved. And someone else I want to hear your thoughts on is Dalen Terry. I mean, last night he had 7 rebounds, so he was good there, and he was active on the defensive end. But there were multiple opportunities, and even Coach Miller said after the game that there was one that really bothered him, where he had the ball on the left side, wide open shot, and decided to drive in and then pass. And that's just been the story of Terry's season, is he catches the ball on the 3-point line from the outside and then either passes it or drives. When you catch it there, you got to shoot, and the only way to get better at shooting is to keep shooting. So, I mean, what do you think about Terry's development so far?
I think I still have some Dalen Terry stock. I just kind of think that he fits the modern game. But you're 100% right. He's got his weaknesses and he's got his issues. And I tweeted after the first Arizona State game, which was probably Dalen Terry's best game of the year. He had 13 points and 2 threes in like the last 5 minutes. And I tweeted after that game saying Terry reminded me a lot of like the Warriors version of Andre Iguodala. Well, he also has a lot of Iguodala's worst tendencies, which is he is deathly afraid to shoot the basketball. And because he's also a really poor free throw shooter, he also hates to drive the lane and face contact because he knows he's not going to make 2 free throws at the line. So I think he's got to work on that jump shot. And what's concerning about that jump shot is the biggest indicator for a future development of jump shot is free throw shooting. And so if you're shooting about 33% from 3, but you're about an 82% free throw shooter, scouts and coaches believe you can keep that touch and you can push that range out a little bit. But with Terry, I think he's shooting 56% from the free throw line. And that just doesn't look good for that development from deep. So I'd be a little worried about that for the long-term range. But I think he's got a really good vision and passing IQ, which is important in college. And I think his best position is a point forward, not necessarily this like stretch forward that Sean Miller wants him at. So I think if you just kind of turn him into a primary ball handler or playmaker, not necessarily even a playmaker, he just has to read the floor really well, which he already does. I think that's where he'll find his excel on offense, which was very much like the Warriors version of and even Sean Livingston. And so if he can just be a good passer, a trustworthy passer that gets his teammates involved and creates good looks for them, that's important because he's active defensively and he's long defensively.
Yeah.
So I think that's just where they need to push the chips in for him.
Yeah, I do still see the upside with Dalen Terry and think maybe in the future, I think 100% he's going to be here a few more years, which is good for everybody. And